Yes, he did.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us on this Donnybrook. The last Donnybrook before Valentine's Day. I'm sure there's a lot of love around this table. We'll find out. Let's meet those panelists, starting with Wendy Weiss from the Big 550 KTRS, Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartman from Substack, founder of the Riverfront Times, and from the St. Louis American, Elvin Reed. Well, above the mantle, you'll see some new artwork this week. We want to thank Marilyn Bradley, local artist, who supplied that, there it is, beautiful artwork. Thank you. It's part of our rotating art program here on Donnybrook. You can learn more about Ms. Bradley's work at MarilynBradley.com and contact us here at 9PBS if you're an artist and you'd like to share your work with the masses. Hey, let's start with Ray. This week, it was announced that the portal seeking comment on the money that the region got from the NFL lawsuit, and the city has about $269 million. The president of the Board of Aldermen, Megan Green, wanted to know what the hoi polloi wanted to do with the money. And so the results came out. 12,000 people voted. Water mains came out #1. Revising the infrastructure to slow down and make traffic a little safer. And the third most popular request for that money was to increase employee salaries. So, what do you think?
Those are all good ideas. I don't think the portal has any meaning whatsoever. It's not scientific. 12,000 people who may or may not be from St. Louis, who may or may not have voted multiple times. It doesn't mean anything, but that doesn't mean their ideas are bad. And what's interesting is now the city leaders are going to have to do what they should have done in the first place, is be leaders and sit down and figure out, by talking to their constituents, of course, figure out what to do. And it's like, I don't know, it's been 2 years. They haven't spent a penny of it. And I just think that's it's kind of a sad tale. And it's the same in St. Louis County. Whatever you decide, everybody makes fun of me about my little idea I had, but it was an idea, and we didn't need to wait.
No one made fun of that. That was a good one. It was mental health.
Bill and Alvin were ruthless.
The people who needed the most made fun of it.
You know, I would think that the results of the portal show, Ray, that it probably was city residents voting for it, because it's practical stuff like the water main. And a lot of city employees must have voted, because I don't think that raising the city employees' salary would be something that people from Australia.
Well, but it also doesn't. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, if I live in the city, though, I'm a little surprised that public safety wasn't a little higher.
No, it wasn't given as an option.
Okay, okay, because I know the traffic patterns. So,
which is a good idea, right? You say that traffic pattern thing that needs to be done, and that'll be part of that whole public safety envelope that is probably going to take the bulk of this money. I still predict that. And I just think that maybe, just maybe, people who do these studies and these polls could tell you you're going to get about this many responses to it, because I thought there would be a ton more.
I did
and
too.
I think they knew in City Hall it will get between 12 and 15,000, and thus we're going to do what we're going to do anyway.
Well, now, hang on. You can't do that. You can't be the president of the Board of Aldermen saying we're going to solicit your input and then ignore it. That would just be horrible.
I don't think anybody's saying she's...
But Mayor Jones made the point that when you talk about the city's sewer system and the pipes and the water and that kind of thing, that's a humongous price tag.
It is, and there's going to be a measure on the April ballot for the sewer side. Now, these water mains, that would be for water flowing into your kitchen sink, that sort of thing.
Right.
So it's a little bit different. But that's actually an adult use of this money.
Is.
It's something that's not too
is.
sexy, but you really need.
I agree with that, but what I was saying, and to Bill's point about the city employees, if they voted disproportionately, and I'm not saying that everybody voted for us, right? But if they voted disproportionately, then the average city resident, it comes off as being concerned about city salaries going up, when that may not really be representative of the average city resident. And my only point, I don't question Megan Green's motives at all, but the bottom line is, at the end of the day, leaders have to lead, whether they're government leaders or business leaders or whatever, and they're going to have to make the same decisions they would have made 2 years ago and the portal isn't, I don't think the ideas are bad, but the portal is not going to govern anything.
I say this leaders should be leaders and give the money to Channel 9. How about that? Bill McCullen, I want to ask you about Paul McKee. There's been a lot of stories about Paul McKee. He started amassing land in North St. Louis around 2009, and he was really controversial for a long time because he wasn't maintaining the property, and the local property nearby was going down in value, and the city actually had to mow his property and clear it of litter and all that kind of stuff. And most recently, a judge ordered him to fix up his property at ABC Towing up on Page because it was so derelict. Well, now the city is saying they want to take his property over by eminent domain. Your colleague at the Post-Dispatch, Hannah Wyman, along with Jacob Barker, had a story in Sunday's paper showing that the grocery store that he established 5 years ago in North St. Louis in a food desert where there's no other grocery stores has seemingly gone out of business, and his lawyers are working the front counter for some reason, Daryl Piggy and John Cross. I don't understand that. But as Ray's pointed out in his Substack column this week, he has opened something between an urgent care and a hospital, 17 beds. What do you think?
Well, I generally oppose eminent domain, but I'll go against my principles and say it's a personal thing. I don't think Paul McKee has been a good thing for the city. I've questioned his big plans from the beginning, and I think that if the city feels that they have to use eminent domain to get that property around the NGA from Paul McKee, who is hoping to somehow make a bundle off of this now, I favor using eminent domain against Paul McKee.
And Bill, I gave him the benefit of the chance when this whole thing began. I said, like, well, you got to give him a shot because he's basically trying to do something on the city's north side. Gave him the benefit of the doubt. That's why I'm ready to slap double eminent domain on him now because, like, dude, you tried, you failed, but you got to give it up now. As far as the hospital is concerned, the problem is the name of the hospital. The Homer G. Phillips Nurses Association feels like the name was usurped. They don't want the name on that hospital. Why they are so belligerent about just giving up that name, I have no idea why. But that's what that lawsuit is about. It's not about the hospital itself. And boy, I'd sure like to work at a grocery store that had no groceries in it. Boy,
lobster egg rolls.
With your law degree.
Lobster egg rolls.
With your law degree, right?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about Paul McKee, but I cannot fault the man for opening up a medical, an emergency facility in an area that is so woefully underserved.
But I'm not faulting him for that. I'm faulting him for the name.
But the name,
take that name
and
off
I don't understand why. Somebody's got to give, and it's going to have to be Paul McKee on the name if he wants to make an impact. And I think that is really, if the clinic sounds like it's properly outfitted, like we've already saved a life there or more. So, just give a little and meet in the middle because it's too important to get bogged down in a name, even though it's an important name.
What I wrote about is the first person that, at least according to a text I obtained, that the first person was saved, that life was saved. And to me, particularly for progressives and people from a side, talking the talk about, racial, justice and systemic racism and all this stuff. But for some reason, all the talk when you actually talk about individuals actually having their lives saved, you know, suddenly that's not as big a priority in fairness as eminent domain or the name of the hospital. And I'm not going to argue. I have no position on the name of the hospital. I just don't. But I don't have standing. You know, it's what it is. But I think that and it's not just as one person. I'm sure they're seeing a lot of patients. No one's done health care. These are people living in...
Nobody said close this hospital.
Well,
no one has said
okay,
that.
I'll tell you what they are saying.
But you're saying that Paul McKee should get to be just derelict and terrible to the community.
Did I say that?
Because he opened a hospital.
Did I say that? I did not say that. In fact, I said in my column, and I've said many times on the show over the years, he's got to take care of his properties. I'm totally sympathetic with the people. I'm less sympathetic with the politicians who themselves, and Jacob Barker, you mentioned him, did a story, I don't know, a year or two ago, documenting outrageous amounts of city property that have the same problem McKee does.
That doesn't have nothing to do with it.
It has a lot to do with it, because the problem is there's nothing, the guy, look, he's responsible. I don't think anybody questions seriously that without whatever he did, right or wrong, we wouldn't have the NGA, which is a big deal in North St. Louis. And I personally think, you know,
that was coincidental, Ray.
It was not coincidental.
He takes credit for that now, but he was just amassing all sorts of property.
No.
And as far as the
personally advocated
Ray, everybody personally advocated for that now.
I disagree with you on that point, but my bigger point is, you know,
He doesn't have a great track record, right?
No, he doesn't.
Now, the hospital that you described,
my point is this.
He's got, what, 17 beds in the hospital?
15 emergency beds and 3 overnight beds.
Okay.
And then let's see how that goes, because the grocery store was the same thing.
Well,
this was in a food desert, and it turned out to
it's terrible. I realize he should
Let
be
me ask you
condemned
something.
for that, because
Question for the whole
grocery
panel. How can it be that grocery stores have been put up in our area in the food desert between Fields and now Greenleaf, and they've gone out of business?
Okay, well,
how can that possibly
I'll tell you
be?
what. You know what? I'll tell you, as somebody that's experienced his share of failure, the only people who haven't failed are the ones who haven't risked anything. And so I'm a little bit sympathetic
how does a
to people.
grocery store in a food desert go out of
Chris
business?
Goodson, okay,
but
Chris
Ray,
Goodson
it was heavily subsidized by the government.
Yes,
we got tens of millions of dollars in subsidies.
Well, first of all, they had the pandemic, and they had, which affects everybody.
So did Schnucks, Steerbergs, and Costco.
They're not, but you know what?
They sort of have
You know, I'm really glad. Maybe everybody can just go to the Schnucks that's down there.
That's
My point is to vilify the guy for trying to do a grocery store, which I understand. I think there's, but here, I want to say one thing,
We're vilifying him for the way he advanced the property.
But I don't think
Hold your thunder.
So this is not one of those. This is not one of those. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Right?
Okay.
Eminent
Got to go on to the
domain
next topic,
is
or we
not
won't?
right here.
All right.
Okay.
Wendy Weiss, I want to ask you about former state senator Maria Chappelle-Nadal, who has thrown her hat into the race for the congressional seat that incumbent Cori Bush has right now. As we know, County Prosecutor Wesley Bell is already a candidate. So who's helped, who's hurt by the entrance into this contest by the former senator?
I can't figure it out. I don't think anybody. I don't think anybody really can. What was so interesting, though, because we haven't heard from her for a while after her falling out with Rita Days and $77,000 payment from the county, is that she said that Wesley Bell is a Republican plant, and she said that Cori Bush has. This is the woman who called. This is Maria Chappelle-Nadal called for the assassination of former President Trump. She had, you know, so many scandalous headlines while she was in office in the Missouri House and then Senate and then House. She said that all that Cori Bush has done is create controversy, which was a little bit, you know, I mean, that's kind of ironic. Yeah. Because that's all she's done. But I'm thinking that she might be taking away from Cori Bush if you would confuse the women. I don't know who she is.
I don't either.
Clearly a stalking horse.
We live in the golden age of conspiracy theory. So whenever something like this happens, the first thing you do is try to think, well, who put her in a race? Or you know, what's the math? I literally, nothing, I just don't have a theory on it. I don't know. I don't think at the end of the day, her candidacy will be that much of a factor. And I mean, no disrespect, but I don't think at the end of the day, she's going to get that many votes. And it's very possible that she's going to get equal amounts from the two of them. And I don't know how you could count.
Generally, I think that if you have an incumbent the more challengers, the better it is for the incumbent. You know, I mean, I'm not sure exactly, but that's what I would say that it would help.
Ordinarily, I would believe that but I think the only reason that Cori Bush is in danger of losing her seat are some of the statements that she's made since, you know, the October the 6th. I mean, that's just 7th. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. That's just reality of it. And so that's why I kind of don't get a feel, because the first question, you know, when Maria does finally do a press conference, it's like, where are you at on this Gaza thing? And she's going to have to pick a side. And, you know, and that's right now, that's the flashpoint in this election. And so we'll see real quick, you know, who's
that
maybe
and the Department of Justice investigation. That doesn't help.
Well,
yeah. And I think
Cori Bush has a pretty good base. I think she's got followers.
Yeah.
I don't know if Wesley Bell has a base like Cori Bush does. And I will say, my first thought about Maria Chappelle-Nadel is that she had been vocal in the past. She had a family member who was a victim of a crime, and she didn't like the way it was prosecuted by Wesley Bell. So I assume she's in it to defeat him.
Okay, that could be personal. Yeah,
could be just like that.
She could just be ambitious.
Yeah, well, there's that.
We have a weak incumbent.
Alvin Reed, I want to ask you about Webster University. Webster University, as we know, has had some financial problems recently. They're hemorrhaging cash. And this week it was reported that some of the restricted funds that have been given to the university by generous donors are now, by the university, being turned into unrestricted funds so they can use the money as they want. It's also been revealed that about 5 years after one of their employees stole $375,000 from the school, someone else, unnamed so far, has misappropriated $1.9 million. What's going on in Webster Groves?
Well, when I was reading those stories, that's my first thought, like, man, what's happening there? How do you miss that much money? Nobody just saw that on any, you know, budget sheet or whatever. And I'm not comparing it to the poor deer that was struck and was on the highway for a couple of weeks there. But when I'm driving down here, I've noted that on the parking garage that faces 44, Webster University's got like 3 new big giant flags flying out there. And I thought, like, you're driving by and said, like, boy, what a time to, you know, have some big gigantic new flags there, because everybody's thinking, like, what's going on? I think I'm more concerned with the theft, the embezzlement alleged or whatever, than I am maybe with going into the kitty to try to, you know, make the budget work. I'm hard pressed to say it's okay to touch up this, you know, money that you're not supposed to be getting into. At the same time, about $2 million, or at least $1.8 million, is out there in the ether land. That they just got to tighten the ship, and they got a chance, because I just throw this in real quick. They did have a story that they're reviewing people's salaries and positions, and the existing president is retiring. So, you know, they could right the ship.
And what's so remarkable, Alvin, you're absolutely right, is that in 2017 there was another instance of embezzlement, or somebody who was placed on probation. But wouldn't you think that after something like that you would have safeguards in place instead of giving out raises, making your leadership among the highest paid in the region? Yeah, well, I mean, that just doesn't.
As student population
dwindles. Exactly.
Well, the same board that gave these raises to the big bosses while the student population plummeted, the board is still the board.
Well, that's right.
What I think is sad about this is Webster's really a good school.
I was going to say that.
And
I really was going to say that.
And it's kind of, it's sad, because we have a number of colleges in the area that are struggling in different ways. And it's sad that this one that probably would have been just fine has been dealing with this major league embezzlement. And I don't know about you, but I think we all know people who have done like adjunct faculty type things there.
Yes.
And in fact, somebody once, you know, was trying to get me to do one several years ago, and I feel like now maybe the ship has sailed. But no, no, seriously, none of the little people were getting anything like that. No. But I think that it's just sad that this is going on.
The thing is, when the employee in 2017 or whenever it was stole $375,000, Judge Henry Autry in federal court gave her probation, and she had to write a 65-page journal. Maybe that sent a message to the other employees at Webster. You can take this
yeah.
money and...
The vault is open.
Well, you know, but I would say Judge Archie's kind of like, man, he's known to be kind of hard line. So he must have had some reason to do that. But
he gave her less time than her own lawyers asked for.
Wow.
Which was weird.
And 65-page journal, was the punishment that
it was
she
like
wanted? From academia, maybe she wanted to write more.
It was a little shorter than one of your Substack.
Well, yeah,
well, did she have to write, I will not steal, like the blackboard?
Phil McClellan, I want to ask you about the friendliest store in town, Schnucks, which recently instituted a new checkout policy. If you go through the automated line, in other words, you check yourself out, self-check, you can only have 10 items or less. And now that, according to the Riverfront Times and other sources, that's caused long lines for people who want to check out with human beings. Did they mess up on this one? What's your thought?
Well, I'm one of those people who likes to go through the line, and I like to talk to the checkers and the bag person. And so I don't have a problem. I just think that Schnucks ought to hire a few more checkers so that the lines aren't so long. But I remember the days when each lane had its own line, and you'd stand there and your line always seemed to go slower than everybody else's. So I thought that their new plan, where it's one big line, is just a huge improvement. So I'm a fan of Schnucks.
I still wait for people to come out and put my, gas in my car and clean my windshield and that kind of thing. I mean, so I'm with you. I don't like the self-serve. I don't like it.
For one or two items, if you're in a real hurry.
If you're in a hurry, sure. But
you older people,
sorry,
I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, no, I was somewhere in the middle in that I've always had, I think, and it's purely out of laziness, I think it was basically, I didn't count them, but basically a 10-item limit. And it's just because I'm too lazy to do more than 10 items. So I prefer to do that. And I'm with you. When they first came out, I thought, this is terrible. They're taking away jobs from people, and I didn't like that. And then I thought, well, they're there, and I'm with you. I think the system they have now is terrific where you have one queue. But, to me, I don't care. It doesn't bother me at all in as much as I'm just, like I say, too lazy to do more than 10 items. So it works out fine.
They had too
but
much
everybody's different.
That's right. Self-checkout.
And I don't blame
it.
It's their store. Right? They do whatever they want.
It's distracted us from presidential politics, so that's a good thing.
It is.
People
and
are so
I think
angry.
all of us, I like to go through the line, one, to see how many Schnucks points I have, or dollars, and then two, nice young lady who works at the Kirkwood Schnucks, she always tells me what we should talk about on the show. And I always appreciate her thoughts. We get a lot of that too. So I do like the person-to-person contact. When that sign first went up, I said 10 items, and you used to have 20. Well, they have enough people checking people out, but if they don't, it's going to cause a longer line. But quite frankly, if I walk into Schnucks and the line's like 17 people deep, I'm going through the self-check.
I have a similar experience with Schnucks, but people come up to me and tell me what I shouldn't talk about. So it's a similar thing. It's Alvin's got a
I will say, I think the folks at Costco move that grocery very quickly.
Oh, they do.
They check people out
Costco's got its own kind of quasi self-check.
They do.
I don't know.
Alvin Reed, you've been a longtime Dallas Cowboys fan. What did you think this week when Hall of Fame broadcaster Bob Costas said that the America's Team designation now belongs with the Kansas City Chiefs?
Okay. Been a fan since I was 1967. Okay. All right. Back in the Staubach days and they're winning the championships. Historic fact. The Dallas Cowboys did not name themselves America's Team. NFL Films named the Dallas Cowboys America's Team. So everybody who hates the Cowboys, they're America's Team. Wait, they did not name themselves America's Team. Right now, the Chiefs are America's Team. About the time you throw in this whole Taylor Swift thing, they're fun to watch. They're exciting. Right now, they're America's Team. Maybe the 49ers will be America's Team if they win the Super Bowl.
And are they St. Louis's team?
Oh, yes, they are. Yes, they are. And the ratings say that. And also, speaking of Schnucks and Deerbergs and the others, go on Sunday morning or Saturday afternoon or an evening. Everybody's getting ready for the Chiefs game. I thought it would
wearing their gear.
Wearing their gear. Yeah. And I never thought that would happen here.
I agree.
Oh, sure.
And I I'm sort of an adopted cheesehead, so I like the Packers, and I always kind of did. And then I like the fact that they're municipally owned, and our colleague Joe Hallman, on the other hand, is a real cheesehead. But I've actually kind of one. But as long as they're not playing the Kansas, I'm a Chiefs fan too now, and I don't know why, because there's other cities as close to us. I think the main thing, and maybe it's, I think maybe to me, Patrick Mahomes is so magnetic.
Yes.
It's such a superstar
exactly right.
that I think Bob's right that it is right now.
Even though
But
their owner voted to move the franchise to LA.
When I was in Arizona,
nobody cares about that.
You know, the people in Tucson never adopted the Arizona Cardinals because they said that's Phoenix's team. And I feel that same way. You know, I'm a St. Louisan, and that's a Kansas City thing.
I do too, especially after the
like
owner of the Chiefs voted to move our franchise to LA. I'm sorry, I'm not over that.
I hear you, but
what are you
money's
talking
money.
about?
You know, like that's why they
That's
did.
all.
Oh, and by the way,
we should
because
be
I'm
more
over there,
concerned with the fact that our owner moved the team.
Well,
instead of
actually, we
somebody
should be
voting
He
for it.
moved it because the other owners voted to allow him to move it.
Well,
And that's
frankly,
what they do. It's
you
the
know
Death
what?
Star.
and
It's
he
the NFL
paid
Death
to do
Star.
it, and then paid the fine or the
Well,
settlement.
money's money.
Money is
Millions.
money.
I
But
don't
real
give
quick,
any-
because I'm over on the other side of the state a lot, especially during football season, they have Red Fridays in Kansas City before that. And when you're there, I wrote in my column, I said, like, that makes me miss the Rams.
Yep.
I said, like, I don't miss the Rams very much, really, until we get into, like, Super Bowl time. But that makes me miss the Rams because when you go any place in that whole region and people have on red and they're excited for their football team, I just think to myself, like, man,
I know.
we should have
It's
done
a
more.
loss.
Well, on that unhappy note,
Yeah, sorry.
let's see what the viewers had to say about last week's program. Ever since the water main break at 40 Tam this past summer, here in Dogtown, we've had terrible water pressure. There is no answer from city water officials, and most of us are at our wits' end. That from Eric Yuchevsky of St. Louis. Bob Wilson wrote, when Mr. Hartman questioned the timing of the charges against Cori Bush, I almost fell out of my chair. It's suspect when it happens to a Democrat, but a matter of doing business when aimed at Trump. Come on. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. You can write us care of 9 PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Send your Valentines there. You can also email Valentines at donnybrook@9pbs.org. And use hashtag DonnybrookSTL on social media. Call the 9 line at 314-512-9094. Listen to us wherever you are on your favorite podcast source. Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next week. Have a great Valentine's Day.
Go Chiefs.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.